Hello and welcome to my channel. This is Jenna from Corner House Craftery. For today's project, I'll be using a witch wooden cutout from Dollar Tree. I start by painting the wooden cutout with a gray color. You can use any color that you like. This is just because I'm going to be decoupaging over. I wanted to make sure my paper comes up clearly when I decoupage it. However, the paper that I end up using, I actually didn't even need to do this step. I could have skipped this altogether, but it's best to give it a light layer so that your image shows nicely. It's probably best to use a white or ivory color rather than the gray, but the ones that I'm using, gray was fine. The next step that I'll be doing is ripping out different images that I printed with a laser printer. You can also use an inkjet, but you want to make sure the paper dries at least 24 hours before using the decoupage or Mod Podge over the piece of paper, otherwise it will smear. The images that I'm using were bought off of Etsy, but you can use cardstock, tissue paper, whatever your theme that is. In this case, I wanted this, I can't even tell you what kind of style this is. Shabby? I'm not sure, but you'll see the finished product in a few moments. But so I'm just tearing different images, placing them where I want to, moving things around, and then I go in and fill in the areas with smaller images. And a lot of the smaller images are what looks to be like handwriting, but it looks really cool when the final product comes together. Speeding up the process a little here, but you can see that I'm ripping a bunch of different images and just placing them in approximate area that I want them. And then I will do this for the whole cutout and filling in the areas with smaller pieces so that you cannot see any of the gray. Once I have an idea of where I want all of my images, I will start by putting down some Mod Podge and placing the image over it, and also placing more Mod Podge over the image as I go. And I do overlap the images a little bit. That's why I rip them rather than cut them, so that you don't have these straight lines. When you rip the paper and you're overlapping, the images seem to just be more cohesive and fit better together. I will continue to do this step until the entire wooden cutout is covered and you can't see that gray underneath. And if your images or your paper go over the outside, that's okay. At the very end, we'll clean that up. So you don't have to cut the image to fit the exact spot, especially the small curves. You will just place your image over it, glue it down, let the excess hang off, and we'll take care of that at the very end. So as you can see, sorry, it's camera angle's a little off, but the entire front is covered with images, and you see when I flip over the back, that excess is there that we want to get off. So I'm going to go in and just cut off what I can with scissors. You could also go in with an X-Acto knife and cut it all out. In hindsight, I should have probably have done that, but I decided to do the burn method here, so I want to get the excess off. I think the burn method works pretty well, but it can get a little tricky, and it can burn your paper and make the edges lift off a little bit, so you'll have to put more Mod Podge over the edges that lift up after you're done burning the excess paper off, but it does give you a nice clean line. Once the excess paper is off, I just take a lighter and hit the edges of the paper. And you want to make sure you put Mod Podge down on the front and let it dry. The excess won't have Mod Podge on it, so it will burn easy, but if it does have Mod Podge, it doesn't burn as easy. So sometimes it's easier just to do an X-Acto knife, but this worked for me. It kind of takes a little bit of playing around with. You may get burn marks on your front paper or the back, but the way that this came out and the way this looks, the burning parts looked kind of cool and matched the theming that I was going with, so I was fine with it. But if you don't want those burn or scorch marks, you should just use an X-Acto knife. When doing this method, please, please, please be careful. Do not burn yourself, and do it in a well-ventilated area. Once all the excess is burned off, I'm just going to take a little sander and sand off the ash left over. And this just gets off any little paper that is still on there. This can take a little while, and I wanted to use a nail file, and I could not find one. It would have been a lot easier to get into those little nooks and crannies, but this little sander worked fine. The next step is taking some antique wax, or you could do a brown acrylic paint, and I use a little dabber, and I just hit the edges going around the whole wooden cutout, and you can see it kind of makes it pop a little bit. This also helps if you're using the burn method and you maybe burned your paper a little too far in. It just blends in all of the paper and the wood at the bottom so that you can't see any of those areas that may have burned away. It just makes it pop, and I think it matches the look that I'm looking for, making it look a little old and grungy. This is completely optional, so you don't have to do this. I also hit the middle parts as well. You can't really see it on camera, but when you get as close as you can to the little images coming together, sometimes they might move a little bit, or you're not exactly at the spot, so a little of the underneath will show. And I just hit that with the dabber, and it just blends in all of those areas that could potentially be showing through. Once you've got the look that you want, you can seal it with more Mod Podge or polyacrylic spray. In this case, I wanted a shiny look to it, so I used UV resin over the entire wood cutout, just the front, to give it this glossy look that I was going for, and I added a little bit of glitter to the UV resin, and it turned out pretty nice. You may be able to use an acrylic spray that has a gloss finish that will give you a little bit of a glossy finish, not as much as this, but the resin is a little time consuming, so if you're not comfortable with it, that is another option. Let me know in the comments below if you would give this a try or how you would change it up. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in a future video. Remember, keep creating.